Hey guys, welcome back to First Principles Finance. Today we're going to be covering Square's Q3 2020 earnings, and I'm really excited to share that they've been able to do extraordinarily well in a very trying time, and I'm really excited for what they'll be able to accomplish in Q4 and beyond. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into it. To start, let's take a look at their earnings and revenue compared to consensus estimate. Q3 continued a trend of consistently beating on both revenue and earnings, but this quarter in particular was especially notable given the fact that they were able to blow out these estimates in a very big way. They more than doubled the consensus EPS estimate, and they outperformed on revenue by nearly $1 billion. For those that have been following Square for some time, it's honestly no surprise for them to beat, but this big of a beat is really notable. Given the pandemic, work from home orders, and a generally sluggish economy, it's honestly really surprising that they were able to outperform in such a huge way. This is actually just a continuation of what we've already seen from previous quarters. Square has had a great track record of being able to beat on both EPS and revenue, and we expect that trend to continue moving forward. Before we jump into the shareholder letter, let's take a look at Hypercharts, which I think is actually a really great resource for seeing certain tickers and seeing the key performance indicators for these companies. First off, gross payment volume was able to increase in a pretty dramatic way in Q3. As we all know, the pandemic has weighed heavily on a lot of small businesses, and so to see this huge spike this past quarter is really encouraging for both the economy and for the sellers that use Square's products. Just based on my own perspective, I wouldn't have predicted or imagined that Square could outperform its Q3 2019 earnings. But this goes to show that Square has done an excellent job of continuing to grow despite really challenging macroeconomic circumstances. This kind of recovery after 2 consecutive quarters of decline is really encouraging not only for Square, but also for the economy as a whole. Moving on, we look at Cash App's monthly active users. This is a really important metric for evaluating how much people use the app and ultimately how engaged these users are. It's also a more useful metric than total users because the active users are likely the ones that are driving a majority of the revenue. We can see a very healthy increase in users over time, and we see that bump in Q3 2020, but I would expect the total number of monthly actives will eventually reach a plateau as Square begins to saturate the US market, and they'll have to look to other geographies or other products to continue their growth trajectory. That being said, they have done an amazing job of viral adoption, and I do think that they will continue to build out Cash App functionality. In fact, Square's management team has covered some of these additional product offerings and integrations, but we'll get more into that in a second. And now, here's the chart that has everyone scrambling to buy Square stock. What seems clear here is that revenue seems to be experiencing exponential growth and not just linear growth. Much of that is attributable to Bitcoin revenue, but that does come with a caveat. Square recognizes its Bitcoin revenue as the amount of Bitcoin sold to its users. On the flip side, Square recognizes the total cost of the Bitcoin purchase from over-the-counter dealers as its Bitcoin cost of revenue. This quarter, Square had Bitcoin revenue of $1,634,000,000. They also had a Bitcoin cost of revenue of $1,602,000,000. Truthfully, I'm a bit surprised that they're able to recognize revenue in this way, as it clearly does seem to juice the revenues. However, it may be a result of the fact that they're selling out of their own inventory, so in a way, I guess it is intellectually honest. That being said, I think a more accurate picture would still be to look at this as net revenue, and hence, rather than saying Square had 1.6 billion in Bitcoin revenue, I would say that they had a little over 30 million in Bitcoin revenue. Regardless, Square's core business has still performed extraordinarily well, with notable increases in its other revenue streams, including hardware, transactions, and subscription and service revenue. Additionally, net income is positive again for the quarter, and I expect Q4 to also be a strong quarter for net income. However, we shouldn't expect it to be as large as Q4 2019, given that that quarter had a spike due to its sale of caviar. Margins have remained strong, and we continue to see a climb in profit margin and operating margin. On the other hand, gross margins have continued to decrease, but I'm not concerned as some of this is likely attributable to the pandemic as well as to a change in product mix. Lastly, we see another wonderful chart that highlights the incredible growth in revenue and the relatively small growth in OPEX. However, the same caveat as before applies, given the fact that Square recognizes all Bitcoin revenue as simply the amount that was sold, and hence this revenue figure looks a bit inflated. Moving on to the shareholder letter, it's worth noting that Cash App experienced extremely strong growth with gross profit up 212% year over year. In fact, a huge reason why you see such incredible growth in Square's stock price over 2020 is because of the fact that Cash App has been a wild success. It is a financial app that is directly consumer facing and has allowed Square to dramatically increase its total addressable market. Building out Cash App was incredibly intelligent on a number of levels. This was also mentioned on the conference call, but Square is doing an even better job of connecting its entire ecosystem of products. This is so important that I'm going to read the entire section that they've written about this in their shareholder letter. Quote, "In the US, we continue to find ways for sellers and employees to instantly access their funds with products such as Square Card and Payroll. Square Card, our business debit card, provides sellers with a way to immediately access and spend their earned funds. Adoption of Square Card has increased each quarter since it launched, and this quarter more than half of Square Card sellers ordered their card within the first month after onboarding. In the third quarter, more than $250 million was spent by sellers through Square Card, or approximately 34% of these sellers' GPV, for everyday expenses such as purchases at gas stations, discount retailers, and other places. Square Payroll allows employers to provide flexible and immediate wages for their employees. It typically takes 2 business days for payroll funds to move from an employer to their employees, which can lead to slower payouts for the more than 80 million hourly workers in the US. In the third quarter, we launched 2 new features for our payroll product: Instant Payments and On-Demand Pay. Instant Payments allows merchants using Square Payroll to pay employees using the funds in their account balance on the next business day with direct deposit or instantly when their employees use Cash App. For employees, On-Demand Pay allows eligible individuals to access their compensation sooner by transferring up to $200 of earned wages per pay period into their Cash App accounts at no cost or to a linked debit card for a small fee. This simplified payroll experience provides employees and employers more flexibility and control over their money and further integrates our seller and Cash App ecosystems. Honestly, I'm so stoked about this announcement because it really points to the ways that Square is able to better integrate these ecosystems. Before, you probably just thought of Cash App as the app where you can either send money to your friends, like a P2P service, or you use it as a brokerage product. But by integrating in this way, using on-demand pay or instant pay, this actually provides a very clean and direct and useful connection between the seller ecosystem and Cash App. Integrating these systems makes it that much more difficult to leave the Square ecosystem and actually encourages employees and employers who are not already using Cash App to use Cash App because there are clearly benefits to being able to access your money immediately. In addition, I could see Square using Cash App and maybe even its Bitcoin on balance sheet to further enable seamless money transfers even between countries. So I can see that Square has ambitions internationally and is already operating internationally, so it's only a matter of time before all of these systems and products are integrated. We've already covered a bit on the financials, so let's jump straight to Square Capital. While Square Capital's revenue was significantly down this quarter, I think it's actually very wise for the company to do so. Like all the banks on Wall Street, Square has had to be careful with its capital and not incur excess credit risk by giving out loans to people who are at high risk of default. Despite this temporary downturn, I am still extremely bullish actually on Square Capital specifically. They have a better ability to evaluate the creditworthiness and credit risk of small businesses compared to the traditional banks that small businesses would have had to ask for loans. This is because Square is able to see transactions in real time. They're able to see the cash flows of a company. They're able to see how much traffic is being driven to these small businesses. And so in this way, especially once the economy recovers and once many more small businesses are able to fully reopen, I think Square will be extremely well positioned to be able to address the small business needs and loans that many of these businesses desire. By having so much more data and by having real-time data, Square can fill a business need of providing capital to small businesses at a rate that's better than what traditional banks would be able to offer them. As Square continues to scale, I can see this business segment being worth billions of dollars on its own. Switching gears, I wanted to briefly mention Square's $50 million investment in Bitcoin. I already covered in a full video why Square might want to purchase this entire amount in Bitcoin on its own balance sheet, and I wanted to provide a brief update on how that's going. So as they mentioned in their white paper, Square purchased approximately 4,709 Bitcoin at an aggregate purchase price of $50 million. Since then, the price has risen pretty dramatically, and we may be in yet another true Bitcoin bull market. At the time of this video, Bitcoin is currently just over 15,000 US dollars. This means that at Square's purchasing price of roughly $10,600, this means they've already gained over 40% on their investment, which amounts to $21 million. Considering it's been exactly 1 month since that purchase, it is incredible that they've already had over a 40% ROI. However, after doing some digging, I realized that this actually will not show up in their financials in any way. I dug through their 10Q and found the following statement. Quote, in October 2020, we invested $50 million in Bitcoin to further our commitment to cryptocurrencies. We expect to hold this investment for the long term. As Bitcoin is considered an indefinite-lived intangible asset, under the accounting policy for such assets, we will be required to recognize any decreases in market prices below cost as an impairment charge, with no upward revisions when the market prices increase. So that's actually quite notable. This means that their investment in Bitcoin, even though it's already returned nearly $21 million, there's not going to be any benefit shown on the balance sheet. Given the great results so far, I wouldn't be surprised if their board allows them to continue purchasing even more Bitcoin. But I am curious to see whether or not accounting policy will change in order to show the gains on their investment. Lastly, Square has continued to show that they're very much open to the idea of mergers and acquisitions. Most recently, the Wall Street Journal published an article highlighting that Credit Karma is in talks to sell tax preparation business to Square. Square continues to demonstrate really incredible strategic thinking. They cater to both consumers and to small businesses, and actually both could benefit greatly from being able to utilize tax preparation software. Anyone with a brokerage account will need to do their taxes eventually, and of course small businesses will need to as well. So this represents yet another amazing cross-selling opportunity for Square and another product that could see viral adoption. So what should we expect from Square moving forward? Wall Street is obviously very pleased with the results, and investors are clamoring to buy more Square stock. During Friday market hours, Square rallied nearly 15% before being rejected off of the $200 level, and I expect Square to continue breaking new all-time highs. However, there are some certain macroeconomic factors that we have to take into account. The biggest risk factors to Square and to the economy as a whole are the pandemic and the state of the election. If we were to see yet another wave of lockdowns, this could be devastating for many small businesses, and many of them may not be able to survive yet another lockdown. Additionally, the election continues to throw some uncertainty into the market. While it's unlikely there will be any further surprises, it still remains to be seen whether we will be able to have a very clean transition. On the other hand, there is positive news on the horizon. Regardless of the final outcome of the election, I suspect that there will be bipartisan support for yet another round of stimulus. This stimulus would help both businesses and individuals, and because Square caters to both, there would likely be an outsized impact on how much this would benefit Square. So all in all, I expect Square to continue growing through Q4. We may see some volatility into the end of the year as things continue to be a bit uncertain on both the public health front as well as the election. However, I am very bullish on Square, and I think it makes sense that ARK Invest keeps Square as one of its top holdings across several of its funds. I definitely plan to continue investing given the fact that Square has performed exceptionally well, and they have a very clear path for increasing their total addressable market and introducing more products that both small businesses and individual consumers can benefit from. So that's it for our Q3 recap. I really hope you guys enjoyed this review of Square's Q3 2020 earnings. Please leave a comment down below if you found this video helpful, and let me know what you guys want me to cover next. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.